So I'm going to go through actually the detail of what the wrists do in the golf swing. They're very much the detail.
The winner of the gold medal and the champion golfer of the year is Padraig Harrington.
If you have to think this much detail, it's a little bit of an issue because you don't want to be thinking that much. It should be more natural, but we are going to go through it just because we know we need that detail at times. Okay, so what actually happens with the wrists in the golf swing? Okay, what I recommend, and there is a little point to this. I'm going to give two. One is my take on it, and another is a little bit controversial. The controversial bit is most people think you should be pronating your left wrist through impact, should be going this way. Actually, it should be extending through impact. Now, I said it. Wow, that is dangerous. Now, I'm going to have to clarify it, and you're going to have to wait about 5 minutes before I clarify what I've actually mean by that. Okay, but I know most people think, yeah, pronate the wrist through impact, but no, sorry, it's actually extending through impact. Okay, so how do the wrists work in the golf swing? So I'll probably do this one and just show you down the line. So we'll start here. So in the takeaway, again, plenty of movement in those feet. You're getting nice and dynamic. Plenty of movement here. You've got a little waggle going, little waggle. Now from here to here, pretty much nothing moved. It's chest. It's like that triangle. It's that one piece. There's no great movement from here to here. From here, okay, the club starts to lift. Okay, now that means you have a bit of ulnar deviation, I think it would be, this side. So there's a little bit of that as I lift. So my wrist started out like so, which if you actually measured this, there's about 10-15 degrees of extension in my left wrist. Even though it looks neutral, it's actually extended. And when I take the club away, that's the extension stays, but this drops a little bit, okay? Just like so. So from there, now at this stage, this kind of depends on your own personality. Most people, what we traditionally years ago call it cocking the wrists, so that would be ulnar deviation, I think is. So when you break your wrists in the backswing, that's personal preference, okay? So you're here, club extended out, nice and wide, everything is there. So how much you break your wrists is personal preference. What we're tending to see now is most players are waiting longer to get that little bit of wrist extension, okay? Remember, I did say longer, but most players will hit the ball further with a shorter backswing and a longer follow through, okay? But as we can see, a little bit goes down a little bit at this stage, then you start to cock your wrist naturally, but most people are leaving it a little bit later, so they'd still be here, and then they have this little bit of cocking at the top, okay? So, right now at this point, and this is where I'm going to differ, the modern golfers, okay, they like this idea that the club face is very strong. If I get this, is strong in the backswing, and the left wrist is bent like this at the top. It's very strong face. You will see a lot of positions like that, okay? I prefer you to go neutral in the backswing and then get the strong club face by bowing that left wrist, okay? It's very hard to do that in not a dynamic situation, in a cold position. So I prefer neutral, and then as you get your transition, your squat, I prefer that wrist to bow like so, okay? You can see the way it's bowing. Now, the reason I prefer you to do that in your downswing or your transition is if you go for this in the backswing, yeah, you're in the right position. But the problem with that is that's good in a long shot, because to get the ball in the air with such a strong face, you'll use some side bend. You can't afford to do that in a chip shot. So if you get the club face strong in this position in a chip shot, you haven't got the time and you haven't got the ability, the time, and it's difficult to add side bend. It's actually bad to add side bend on a chip shot. So if you're too strong in this position and you're trying to help it up in the air, you're going to be a bad chipper. It's not a great place to chip from with a strong club face in the backswing. Very difficult to do it. you're better off with a neutral club face for chipping, and then to bring that into your golf swing, neutral, toe pointing straight to the air, that would be strong. We want it pointing up, and we want it then to bow in the transition here, okay? We want that bowing action because we do want a strong face, and we can counter that with the body side bend to get the ball in the air. So I prefer you to bow it in transition, not in the backswing, okay? That's definitely personal preference. From what I see, people who bow it down in the backswing, people who get the club shut or strong in the backswing, struggle with their chipping, okay? And maybe bunker play as well. So what actually happens in transition, right? Neutral, bit of a lift, wrist cocks. As we sit into our left side, you get that bowing feeling. Now watch, so it's there. So basically, this piece, it's going up and out, okay? The top of the wrist here, okay? It's not, so it's up and out. The grip is actually, you're trying to rotate the grip in your fingers. And the same with the right hand. The right hand is trying to rotate the grip. It's very easy to do it. It's that motion. There's a twisting. And look, the club, I know people are afraid of extension, but to be honest, this is pulling up to get this high. So as you're going into your downswing, this is pulling to get it high, and this is extending. So there's a double pressure. That's pulling against the right hand. That's adding torque into that downswing. So it's going, that's extending, and that one's coming up, okay? So again, that should happen naturally for a lot of people. It's the same movement as I said, swinging a baseball bat, a tennis racket. So it bows, there's a bit of pressure there. And once you're from here, and this is the controversial thing that I talked about earlier. So if we can get into a great position where our club face is strong, our wrist is pronated in this position, okay? We've got that pressure, that there's a counteraction. As Pete Cowan always says, it's like twisting. You're trying to twist a towel, try and dry the water out of a towel, squeeze the water out. They're going against each other, okay? And from here, we know that our body is extending up on the left side and back. We know that our right side is staying down and we're getting side bend, okay? But watch what happens. From a strong club face, so if I have my left wrist pronated 20 degrees, I'm going to extend it, so maybe it's pronated 5 degrees at impact. So I've extended 15 degrees, which makes logical sense. I want the club to release, so the club has to go forward and past my body, past my center of gravity, okay? That's a release. It can only do that if the left wrist is extending. That's why we want to be in such a strong pronated position, so we can throw, we can extend the wrist and still be in a pronated position at impact. So we've gone from 20 degrees to 5 degrees or so. There's a little bit of lift, okay, which actually makes it look like it's more pronated. So the wrist has come up still a little bit through impact. There's a little element of the club lifting. There's still, it is pronated at impact, but it has been more pronated, so it's actually extending. That extension, as my left leg accelerates up, my body accelerates up, there's a little element of throw of the club face. The best ball strikers have that strong position so they can release the club. Clearly you want the club releasing past your hands. That's the reality. If you tried to bow down all the way through impact, you'd be holding the club face back, which is not going to give you your best release. So you've got to have it bow down, pronated, and you've got to extend it coming through. It doesn't mean you're getting cupped. Unless you were going over something, you'd only be cupped if you're hitting a bunker shot, if you're hitting a chip shot, you wanted to get it high in the air over a tree, then you'd exaggerate it and cup it. We need to practice that, just so you know what it is. But in general, it will be pronated quite a bit, and then you reduce that pronation as you come in and extend into a position with the wrist being lifted. If I show you that, if I showed you my address position there, so if my address is like that, when I come in, you will see there's a little lift of the shaft. You've got to pull the shaft up in order for the club head, the energy to go out to the club head. You've got to stop the shaft, you've got to stop the grip in some way in order for the head to pass. The worst thing you could be trying to do through impact for speed and strike, as I said, if you're trying to pronate and you're keeping that grip moving, relative to the face moving at the same pace, that's not very good. You want to be pronated and release it. And you will get a lot of that from our original lesson of just standing there and just flipping that club out there. It's such an it's very simple in golf to hit the ball. You know, that's a 9-iron. Maybe on tournaments I'm hitting 160 yards, but it only takes a little flick to hit it 140 yards. And for you amateurs who are playing once a week, make sure your wrists are active, because there's a lot of energy you're not using there. And as I said, it will also give you the ability to draw and fade the ball. It will give you face control, which is all you need. And for the better golfers, yes, that might be a bit of a new idea for you, that you're actually meant to be extending through impact from a pronated position. You stay in a pronated position at impact, but you've gone from very pronated to less pronated. So we're extending as we're going through it if you want to get the best strike on the ball. I think I've just about covered everything. Get an active wrist, learn face control, keep a dynamic swing, and for the better players, as I said, don't be trying to hold on to it too much. You've got to release the club head.